Gabi, you're live.
Hello and welcome to the Dr. Love Show. I am Gabi Love, an international love coach and matchmaker based in New York City. This show has come upon when my investor mentors told me that it's time to start branding the Dr. Love brand. So I'm currently working on my PhD, and they've introduced me to our wonderful producer, Cooj. After 13 episodes, we will be pitched to a television show. Thank you all for being a part of this adventure. In conjunction with my topic of the night, which is vector lovers, Lewis Carroll once wrote, "If you do not know where you are going, any road will take you there." Following this line of thinking for tonight's topic of vector lovers are those in a relationship with direction, passion, and focus. Vector lovers commit to their mission ahead of them. In short, vector lovers know where they are going and know when to throw gasoline in the fire. To help me with this topic, I invited 3 experts in the field of empowered love. My first guest is the lovely Tina Paymaster, who is a health and lifestyle expert based here in New York City as well. My second guest is Bruce Anapol, who's a financial representative at Strategies for Wealth based in New York, New Jersey, and California. My third guest is Kujateli Kweli, and that's our wonderful producer, Cooj. Welcome, all 3 of you, and thank you so much for joining me tonight. My first question I'd like to ask each of our distinguished guests is it too pushy for a lover to ask that they develop a mission statement for their relationship? Let's start with Tina, who I've asked to take on what I call the femme perspective, which just means females. Go ahead, Tina.
So this is an interesting question because I feel that probably 4 years ago or so I would have said not at all. I would have thought that was the most brilliant thing anybody can do, because then you both are super clear on what you want and where you're going, and there's no room for deviation. But that's not how reality goes. So I actually don't like that idea, because I feel like that's putting too much control and restrictions and constraint on a relationship. I believe that we need to allow relationships to kind of evolve organically and see what comes out of it. I think it's super important to really understand who you are first and be making choices in your life that are in alignment with that. And you'll naturally then, when you have that confidence in yourself and know who you are, attract somebody that is in alignment with those values as well, and then your experiences will kind of speak for themselves and be your mission statement. I don't think you necessarily have to define that.
Okay, great. Koo, do you want to go ahead and take the men's perspective?
Well, I think definitely your relationship should have a mission statement. However, another important question is timing. On your first, second, third date, that's not the time to ask, well, what is the mission of our relationship? At least from the male perspective, I think that would scare most guys. I think a relationship progresses from the fantasy to the reality, and in the first few weeks is the fantasy stage. However, it reaches a point, okay, where are we going with this? And then when you decide you want to take it to any level, it's good to develop the capacity to talk to each other. Even if the relationship is just going to be, friends. And no further, or as popular today, friends with benefits, and no further. That needs to be said so that everybody's clear about where you're going.
Okay, great. Now, Bruce, how about the marriage perspective on that?
I take Gina's position in that it's a little contrived, I think, to have those type of boundaries. I compare it to being a helicopter parent, which my wife and I have never been. It is that our relationship has developed organically. It was because we had gotten to know each other in college and had been separated for a while. We're never together in college in that way. We're just friends, and there was a 3-year period where we didn't see each other. And when we got back together, our relationship developed not because of any boundaries that we set or because of any guidelines we gave each other, but because we had just natural feelings evolving towards each other. So it really didn't it didn't weigh in the balance whether we had a mission statement. It was just catch as catch can, if you will, and that's sort of how we raised our kids. We raised them to think independently and we raised them organically, and so we never hovered over them to do work or do anything that we wanted them to do. It was more what they wanted to do and how they wanted to evolve, and that's sort of how our relationship evolved.
Great. On the dating perspective, I will answer a little bit differently in the world today of the Tinders and the OkCupids. What I'm finding that's most beneficial for the daters that I work with, which is a lot, is that there is, and I believe maybe too with Bruce and Tina, there might have not have been a mission statement, but there has to be some sort of energetic exchange at some point that you're both on the same page. And what I'm finding that I have to tell couples today mostly is that the faster they can get to that energetic or verbal exchange where they know they're both on the same path and going in the same direction, the better it is. So it's more efficient. So couples don't spend a lot of time dating somebody they think might go there, and a year later, they've aged a year, and nothing has happened, and the other person is well off on Tinder and been on 100 Tinder dates that month. So I think in the dating world, it is a little bit, has to be acknowledged a little bit in 2015.
I'll agree with you there, Gabby. I do believe that the conversation needs to be had. I think the other thing that's important to note is what you're looking for. If you're looking for that long-term relationship, if you're looking to just kind of get out there and build up that energy to start dating again. But I'll definitely say that I do believe that it's a conversation needs to be had at a certain point. I just don't believe in kind of that defining, I guess, mission statement. To me, that kind of reads more of these fine lines. But so I guess I agree on both points there.
I agree with you as well. So let's go on and ask you another question here, Tina. Truth or myth in your eye? Is having a serious, this kind of goes with the same theme, is having a serious relationship too early ruin the chances and the direction of the long-term exclusive relationship? So is there a timeline according to your belief system? And if so, what is that timeline for that talk?
So what is the timeline? Okay, so in terms of your statement, I would say for me, I believe this is a myth because I don't believe in rules, I guess. I think it's hard to define, to say that there's a specific timeline. What I do believe in is really trusting your intuition and letting that guide you. And if you feel that you need to have a talk about your relationship, then have the talk. It's better to get those questions answered earlier, like you said, than wait 6 months, a year, 10 years down the line. That being said, I do, like I mentioned, think relationships also need to evolve. So you need to be realistic in realizing that neither you nor the person you're dating may know 100% what they want or don't want in that moment. I think it's definitely important to have that balance between honesty and openness in any relationship. And I think just naturally as two people get to know each other better and connect more on different levels, the direction of the relationship can change dramatically. So I think you have to just kind of listen to what your gut is. The other thing that I would say is that if you find yourself, this is really important, if you find yourself as being that type of person that's always having those talks or having them often, then I think you should ask yourself what the motive is behind it. I would say I used to be that person. So is it fear of abandonment? Is it fear of not being loved enough? And many of these fears come from our past or our future, right? Meaning that you might be fearful of something, a relationship that went bad in your past, or you may be fearful of what could potentially happen in the future. But the best thing you can do is really be fully present in the relationship you're in, because you'll see those signs, right? And the greatest thing about that too is that within that relationship, if you're present and not, asking so many questions about the past and the future, you're going to be able to appreciate that person and yourself for who you guys really are. So while I believe it's okay to have that conversation, if your intuition is telling you that you need some clarity, first, don't go in kind of expecting a certain answer. If you're doing this from a place of curiosity and needing clarity, then that's fine. But if you're doing it because you want that person to say something specific to fulfill you in a way that you're not fulfilling yourself, then there's probably something much deeper going on within yourself that needs to be worked out.
I like that. So one more question, truth or myth. A sex hookup does not mean anything beyond sex.
So once again, I would say I think as a definitive statement, I think this is a myth. I don't think there is a true or false here because there are no set rules once again. I would say yes, for some people, sex may be just that, just sex, but you can't assume that it doesn't mean something to the other person, and you can't actually always assume that it won't mean something to you. Physical connection creates an incredibly intimate bond to somebody, and I don't mean that even obviously in the obvious way that we're speaking about here, but you're literally providing some level of love, affection, and pleasure to the other person as well as yourself. So at our core, we want to feel that on a daily basis. To say that it can just mean absolutely nothing, I think more often than not is not true, even if we tell ourselves that that's the case.
Great. I have one more question.
Let me add 2 points. One is, one of the problems that I find a lot of people running into, they have relationships that, let's say, may last 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. And then all of a sudden they're turning to their partner and saying, well, we're going to get married. And the person says no. And they say, well, you've wasted 7 years of my life. That to me says that they didn't have the conversation soon enough that they should have had. Because if you're not really getting something out of the relationship and you're just waiting for the ring or it to go to the next level, there is no guarantee that any relationship is going to go to that level. So you have to be careful in while you might let a relationship grow organically, not letting it, being aware of what your clock is and what is acceptable to you if you have to walk away from the relationship.
But I also do.
Go ahead.
I also do believe, I totally agree with you, but I also do believe that there are always red flags. There are always red flags, and often we turn a blind eye to them. So, going 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the line, was there never a moment in there that you needed to kind of ask a question that you were worrying about? So I don't think that things turn just turn dramatically and hit things just change out of nowhere, which we often say. I've said that in the past. But when you look back, there are red flags. There are signs. But it's hard, I guess, when it comes to love, to often allow ourselves to see them so we can step away.
I'm going to butt in here. I think that's more, what I've seen is more of a female issue. Men have the opposite issue. They turn their eye, they don't turn their eye, and they run too fast. They see one bad little sign, and it's like, oh, no, on to, what do you call it, Cooge? The bigger, better deal.
The BBD.
Women stay in it a little bit too long. So that's just been my experience. Women do turn their eye. Men make it a bigger deal than one little character defect may actually be. That's been my experience with men and women.
And I think there's a lot of good points being made, but I think that the red flag is, hope is not a plan, and I think sometimes people hang around a relationship hoping that things are going to work out, even though there are signs all along the way that they probably will not in the long run. And I just had a friend of mine recently tell me that he broke off a relationship because they only been going out for a few months, but they've both been around long enough to understand, and I think that also comes with age comes wisdom. They had been around long enough and been through enough relationships to understand that while they had certain common ground, it wasn't enough to keep it going. And I think it takes a certain level of maturity to see those, to not put your head in the sand, and to stop hoping, and to have more of a concrete understanding of what's a good relationship and what's not. And I think that's the sign sometimes.
I like that. No time for heads in the sand in the love world, I think. Tina, I have one more question for you. Truth or myth? To sustain a healthy and happy relationship, both partners need to be committed to meeting each other's needs.
So this is such a great question. And it's a great question because I was under this assumption that this was true for most of my life, actually. And I'm going to stand strong and say this is a huge myth, and I'll explain why. Well, the biggest lesson that I learned in many of my relationships, and for anyone that is struggling with relationships, finding them, staying in them, whatever it may be, and having the same types of unhealthy relationships that I did over and over again, this is going to be really helpful. So one of the biggest lessons I learned is that no one is responsible for your happiness. And I mean no one, not your boyfriend, not your husband, not your wife, whatever it may be. It's our responsibility to find and nurture the happiness within us, and then to extend that with the people that we're with, because that's the purpose of happiness, right? Joy and love are not selfish. Joy and love are meant to be shared, and you can only share it and provide that with someone if you have a full tank, obviously, within yourself. And if you can do that, you won't find yourself constantly expecting from the other person and having your needs unmet, which I found myself in over and over again. So if anyone's going through that, then I urge you to kind of ask yourself if this is the kind of patterns that you've been seeing. When you can meet your needs for happiness, when you can learn how to fulfill yourself, you can be fully present in your relationships and appreciate the amazing things that it has to offer. Or, like we're saying, you will be able to see those red flags. When you're more in tune with yourself, you're going to be able to see those red flags more clearly and have the confidence to step out of a relationship that isn't serving you well. So if you're constantly feeling like you're not getting the love and attention from your partner, or feeling like you keep attracting the same type of men or women, I want you to ask yourself, are you giving yourself what you're asking of them? Are you taking responsibility for your happiness? Because it doesn't exist outside of you. It doesn't exist in the perfect partner. You see, for me, I wasn't giving those things to myself. I wasn't respecting myself, loving myself, or trying to make myself happy. I was putting all of that pressure on the people outside of me for as long as I can remember. And those relationships never worked out. And so to sum this up, I would say that I think the most important thing is for you to be committed to your needs and then share that love and happiness and positivity that's within you with the person that you're with. And I do think, however, that it's important to be in a relationship that has a foundation for respect and honesty. And also to know that if the relationship is not in alignment with who you are, it's time to get out instead of trying to change that other person. So lots of important lessons in here, but I would say that that's kind of the biggest thing that I've learned, and I kind of stand by that now.
I think you hit the ball right out of the park. I couldn't agree with you more.
I think a lot of that comes, I think a lot of what Tina talked about is really just wisdom and maturity. You look at things a little differently as you get a little older, and you learn from experience what works and what doesn't work, and you start to understand that what Tina said, I couldn't agree more, that your own happiness really is dependent on you, the person. Are you happy with what you're doing? Are you happy with the effort that you're putting in every day to be a better person, to do better in your career, to be a better member of society? And I think that happiness that we create for ourselves, a relationship is actually the ability to share that happiness with somebody else, and somebody else to share that happiness with you. And that's really where a successful relationship is based on, is two people who are, to a degree, happy with themselves and are able to share that with each other.
Thank you, Bruce. Cooj, let's go ahead and move on over to the men's perspective on some opinions of truths or myths in your opinion. Men want sex and not relationships. Truth or myth?
Well, first of all, I have to say that no man can speak for all men. But in my perspective, as men grow more mature, they realize that sex is not the most important thing on the planet. And that sex in the context of a relationship is much more fulfilling. But I even have to say for myself, when I was young, sex to me was the best thing on the planet. And relationships were not something that I was really focused upon. There's a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And he makes an interesting point. He says that most men can't make any money until after they're 40 because they don't mature enough to realize that the same sexual energy that they are using to run 2, 3, 4, 5 different women at the same time is the energy that also creates the creativity to make money. And when you can focus on one person and then put the rest of your energy into your business, you become a lot richer. Not just financially, but emotionally.
Bruce, did you feel that's the case with your pattern in life?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting point. We hear the term sometimes. We talk about people who are mature beyond their years, and I know in my own children, I have 2 sons. One is 17 and one is 23. The 23-year-old has a lot of growing up to do. He's out of college and he's still trying to figure out what he wants to do with his life. And I think he probably thinks about sex as something that's just fun and got to have it. My 17-year-old, on the other hand, is very focused. He's off to the Air Force Academy in a few weeks, and his maturity is way beyond that of a 17-year-old guy. He's probably as mature as people who are ready to graduate from college, and I think that will serve him well. And I could see him having a greater level of success at an early part of his life than my older son, who may not taste success until he's way into his 30s. For me, I was very lucky to get into a relationship with Kathy like I did with my wife, who we're coming on 25 years this year. And I think the saying behind every good man is a good woman, I think, holds very true for us. I don't think I would have had the success in my career if I didn't have that focus of being in a committed relationship and having a family and all the trappings that come with it. So I knew as I was coming into my 30s that I had to step up my game, and I did. And I remember sitting in when I was now 36 years old, we just had our 3rd kid. It was my older son's kindergarten meet the teacher night, open school at the elementary school for the first time. And I remember sitting there and saying to myself, looking around at all the parents, and we just had our 3rd kid. My wife was still in the hospital with him, and I remember saying to myself, oh my God, I'm an adult. And I was 36. So, it's a process. Life is a process, and what Klug said is absolutely true. Some of us get it earlier, and some of us get it later. And I don't even know if it has to do with what books we read or don't read. I think it sometimes just has to do with who we are as a person.
Sure.
And how we were raised.
Sure. Thank you. So, Kuj, back to you. Truth or myth? Men do not want to talk about the relationships. They prefer if it just evolves non-verbally.
Here again, I can be autobiographical. Yes. When I was young, I operated on the principle, if I didn't bring it up, maybe it wouldn't come up. In terms of serious relationship, exclusivity in the relationship, matrimony, etc. However, it's going to come up. Again, it's a question of timing, but and I should also say about men is we like to show things rather than say things. Now, as you get older, you realize that you do have to say things. Like, for example, I love you. met so many guys that say, well, I don't have to say I love you because she should know I love you. I love her. And I act, she should be able to read what I'm thinking. And but the truth of the matter is, how often do you have to tell a woman that you love her? I'm sure with 25 years, the answer would be every day.
That's correct.
And you know, it's just like when I grew up, I wasn't a touchy-feely person. But yes, you do have to hug people. You know, it's not just about when you're having sex. The hugging and the touching and the cuddling actually is more important than sex. 'Cause one of the things you can do that more often.
Very nice.
Those are my comments.
I'd like to say something in there. I couldn't speak on some of these things because they were talking about the male perspective, which I don't have. But what was interesting about something that you said, Kuj, about how often do you have to tell a woman that you love her, and it's every day. This is once again a really interesting point because it's something that I needed to hear every day, right? And so if you're in a relationship where you feel like you need somebody to tell you that every single day and sometimes multiple times a day, I think it's more a reflection of why you're seeking that from somebody. I do think, obviously, words are really important in a relationship, and it's important to communicate how you feel, but I don't necessarily think that it's a set rule. I think for me, I don't need to hear certain things that I did before because I've worked on myself, because I've built that self-love up, that kind of that happiness within, that fulfillment within. And so I think you have to also learn it. You kind of have to meet in the middle a little bit when it comes to relationship. But I'm going to stand up for some of those women that say, you know what, I don't need to hear it every day anymore. But also, you know, for the women that do need to hear it every day, you know, I would say go out and, you know, work on yourself, focus on yourself, and find ways to fill yourself up with love so that it's not necessarily something that's going to define whether you feel loved.
Yeah, I think a kind action is sometimes as powerful as a kind word. So just the unsolicited little peck on the cheek, or just the unsolicited touch is sometimes a nonverbal way of saying I love you, and it conveys that message.
I'd like to add this point. I agree with you that a woman, for that matter a man, should have enough self-esteem that they don't need to hear it every day. However, just a word of wise from the experience, a word of wisdom from a person who's been experienced. When a woman says, you don't have to tell me I love you every day, you don't have to remember my birthday, you don't have to buy me gifts, you don't have to celebrate Valentine's Day, you should anyway. It is to your advantage. That's
amen, brother. No, it's true. I mean, women, you know, look, women are still women, and you have to recognize those things. Now, I don't know who invented Valentine's Day. I don't know if it was invented by a woman or if it was invented by a man. But it must be recognized.
You guys want to hear the scientific, where science stands on the air show? Okay. All of us feel and experience love by either one of 5 ways. So if your mate is somebody who experiences and feels love with words of affirmation, then yes, telling them that you love them and you appreciate them and verbally expressing your love to them is extremely important to that person. The second way that someone can feel love is by gifts. We all know the girl or the woman that loves a Louis Vuitton bag for Christmas, and that makes her happy for the whole year, for her Hanukkah gift. We all know that.
We all know her.
Yes. Then there's the woman that needs the quality time, which is where I always fail. I had a boyfriend dump me one time because I just could not sit and watch a TV program with him without being on my laptop. And he thought that was rude. and I later found out was, he feels love through quality time. And I always fail at that one the most. Another way that somebody feels love is through touch. That works very well for two people that choose to be very intimate, and that's the lovey-dovey couple that's always kissing and touching each other and being touchy-feely. And they experience love through touch. And the last one is through acts of service. And that's the woman that wants you to open and close the door, or the man that wants you to pick up his plates after he eats. That's the one that likes the grass mowed for them, or the dishes washed, the laundry done, picked up. And that's been scientifically shown that that's a way that somebody can actually really feel love. So what I always suggest my clients is to know their top 2 out of that 5, and also know the top 2 out of that 5 for your mate. It does help to ensure that we can at least be consciously giving the love that our mate will feel. So
I think that's really important. Yeah, I think that's really important to understand how the other person receives love.
right.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah, we can't assume it's the way that we do for our partners at all. It goes wrong a lot in relationships in that department, when people assume that what makes them feel great is what makes their partner feel great. But moving along here, I do have one more question for you, Cooj, that men do not like to commit to anything that restricts their sexual options.
Well, the way to answer that question is this. There are male fantasies and there are female fantasies. And it is a male fantasy that you could have unlimited access to unlimited women all your life. But that's a fantasy. We know that that's obviously an unhealthy fantasy. It's just like the kings all throughout Europe. They used to call syphilis the disease of kings, and not only that, the fact that they were intermarrying made them very unhealthy people. So there's some fantasies that are unhealthy, and you're going to learn that sooner or later, and the sooner you learn that, probably the healthier that you will be.
Great, thank you. Let's move over to Bruce now, our marriage expert. And truth or myth for you as well, Bruce. Happy wife, happy life.
That's absolutely true. And the reason it's true, and it goes back to the conversation earlier. Is two people in love, or two people that I think are happy with each other and are happy sharing that with each other. And so, what makes and it's not just happy wife, happy life. I mean, certainly we both have to be happy in a relationship. But I use it as, I always use that saying as sort of a tongue-in-cheek thing with my friends, that my life is always good because my wife is always happy. And so for me, and I think for a lot of men, if their wife is happy, and again, it has to go like what Tina was saying earlier, it's a person that's happy with themselves that can be happy in a relationship. And I think my wife, fortunately, is very happy being who she is, and I'm happy being who I am, and together we share that, and that's why that happiness, it's not just happy life, happy wife, it's also for her happy husband, happy life, because we do that together.
I love that answer.
I've heard more than one version of this truth, and I'd have to say there must be some truth to it, so I like it. I have one more for you, truth or myth, Bruce. The most important thing a father can do for his children is love their mother.
Well, that's 100% truth. It has to do with creating the atmosphere that children grow up in, and raising a healthy child comes from a child seeing parents being happy in their relationship. I think one of the great comments or the great compliments that we got from our daughter not long ago was her having the belief that it's going to be very hard for her to live up to the type of marriage that we've shown her, and is she ever going to be able to find that type of genuine happiness in her own life? And we said, of course. I mean, it's just, you know, it's just finding someone that you're comfortable with, sharing sharing time with, that you can laugh with, and by extending that type of kindness to my children's wife, to my children's mother, they've had a good example of how, for my boys, how to treat a woman, and for my daughter, how she should be treated as a woman. And I think that's a very healthy way that they've grown up, because they've had a father who's loved their mother so.
I think that also relates to dating. There are a lot of women out there, and for that matter, men, in the dating pool that have children. And even though in the beginning a lot of people believe that, well, the two should date without involving the children, ultimately you are dating, it's a package deal. It's not you fall in love with the woman or you fall in love with the guy and then the kids are over on the side in some other deal, even if the father is there and there's alimony and parental visits. You're a part, even if it's not marriage, even if it's just dating, they're a part of the package.
But you know, and the thing about that, though, that could be a double-edged sword. I've known women with children who have let a guy into the family, and then a couple years down the line, the relationship didn't work out, and the guy who was dating the woman was very invested in the children, and the children had become, and they were young at the time, had become very invested in him. And so it was not only a heartbreak for the woman breaking up with the guy, but it was also an unnecessary, I think, heartbreak for her children. So you have to be careful with that. That's a little bit of a double-edged sword sometimes.
Yes. Mates must be chosen very wisely when there's children involved. I totally agree with that. Truth or myth, Bruce? The fact that you cannot seduce your man during the playoffs does not mean that he does not love you.
Well, you look, a playoff game is 3 hours. There's another 21 hours left in the day. So, you know, everything is compartmentalized in life. This is my little sanctity, whether it's the Ranger playoff or the Yankee. God forbid I get disturbed during a Yankee playoff game or a World Series game. You know, it happens during certain times of the year. Fortunately, the Yankees, Rangers, Knicks, you know, they're not all good at the same time. So maybe it's one playoff series or a couple during a year. But yeah, it's a little bit that I ask, and I don't think it makes me a bad person.
I had to throw that in there today because I'm so grateful to have Bruce on board. Apparently, there's some Rangers game. That's I'm truly a blessed woman to have you on board today. Thank you so much for being here. You taught me a lot with us tonight. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And let me just add that in the bigger picture, most men need cave time. And that does not mean they don't love you, but there's sometimes they need to spend by themselves or with the guys. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that, you know, you're having a child or you're having a moment or they can't be interrupted. But it is, and I think women need that time too. So love to me is not you being together 24/7, you know, 52 weeks out of the year. I think love means you can love the person if they're not with you every moment or have special times that they want to themselves.
And you know, I will add to that too that within the family dynamic, I don't think I could always spend as much time watching the playoffs or was always able to watch every game that I wanted to watch because you know, we had 3 kids, and I couldn't just abandon. I don't think, and I know there are guys who just abandon their wife, and it's like, you know, whatever. I can't be bothered. I was never that type of a person, but you know, I even think back to when the Knicks had their run in 1994. I mean, we had 2 kids at the time. In fact, my daughter was an infant, and she was going to bed early, so my kids were in bed when the Knicks games started. So I had my time. I helped get the kids to bed, and then I had my time to watch the game. So, and it wasn't on, and the games aren't every night. So, it's just drawing a delicate balance in your life and in all areas.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Okay, now, Gabi, let me ask you questions from the dating perspective. Truth or myth? The man should guide the direction of the relationship and decide when to have the DTR talk.
DTR, that was a new term just brought to me by a male client of mine. He said, Gabi, is it time yet for me to have the DTR? And I said, what is the DTR? I'm dying to know. And he said, it's determining the relationship. And it blew my mind that he was thinking about it so intently, and even labeled it. It might have come out of some men's book somewhere, but I had never heard it before. I thought it was great, and I let him know that I was going to take it for one of my episodes. I absolutely think when people are dating that it's a value for both of them to kind of know who's the masculine energy and who's the feminine energy of the couple, because that's polarity. And I think even in homosexual couples, there's always a masculine energy and a feminine energy, whether it's 2 men or 2 women, and whether it's a heterosexual couple. And it's wise when couples are aware of it and they kind of cater to it at times. It kind of gives something to go on. And it doesn't have to be set in stone. It can be malleable. But overall, what I see in couples is that there's this dynamic of the masculine and feminine energy. So I think it's the DTR should be initiated by the masculine energy. So I have a lot of women that say they want to be the feminine energy of a relationship, but they take on their role like they have in their office, very masked, especially here in New York. Go get her, go get her, go get her, go get her. LA, the experience was a little bit different that I had there with my clients there. And here, I see it as a problem. You know, women can be such go-getters and work these days in 2015. We have that luxury. But then they tell me they want to be the feminine energy of a relationship. And I think it's just great. All the male clients that I talk to these days, they do think about it, ladies. They do think about this DTR talk. They wonder when it is time to have it. I think it's good that if you want to be the feminine energy of the relationship, to let your man kind of lead that discussion. And, you know, if you want to push him in a certain way to it, there's ways to do that are very feminine too. But overall, what I've learned, it's just best to let the masculine energy dictate when that DTR talk happens.
I would say, I mean, I guess the part of the feminine and masculine energy, I think I was always more of the feminine, but I was having, or I thought I was, maybe I actually wasn't, but I felt like I was always having that conversation, but I also was with all these men that were not ready for commitment. So that's a kind of interesting thing as well. I think, would you say, Gabi, that the masculine energy, whoever that is, whether it's a male or female, will actually always have that conversation? Because I don't know if I believe that the masculine energy is always going to step up to that. So at that point, if you are more of the feminine energy, or you want to be, you know, to step up and have the conversation if that's what you feel needs to happen.
If he doesn't, hopefully you're dating a bunch of other guys simultaneously, and one of them will step up. I love it. You know, that's how men date. Men have taught me how to date in 2015. They are dating in big cities and probably smaller cities too. If they have access to a lot of women, until they have that DTR with you, they are not considering themselves exclusive with you. And no woman should either until that talk has happened. So if you have several contenders going at the same time, at one point one will step up to the plate. And you can send hints about it in a feminine manner, but I absolutely say wait for the guy to do it. And if he doesn't, another contender will take his place and do it for you.
Yeah, if I can add a thought, it would be that men do not get hints. And for some reason, women think that men do get hints. And it's fine to just have a flat-out discussion, an honest talk. It doesn't, just because you talk about something doesn't mean you took control of it, but you know, certain talks need to be had at certain points, certain clarifications of mixed signals and what certain things meant and did not mean. But I wouldn't trust any woman who believes that she can communicate by hinting to a man. We just do not get it.
I agree with you there. Hinting was not the right word. What I would bring in at that point is what I call authentic related. And in a way where she wasn't dictating the DTR, she would authentically relate to him that it is in her interest. And that's more along the line as to what I mean by hinting. But definitely I agree with you. Men do not get hints. They do not see cues. Scientifically speaking, women, we are biologically, naturally do that. When we have children, we have to know when our baby is hungry without it saying, "Mommy, I'm hungry." We are trained with this. I had a boyfriend one time who would say anytime he went to an elegant ball, he would love to have a woman with him because the woman would know exactly what everyone was going through and thinking in that ballroom. Whereas men, they just see what you know, the face value. But us women, we can really read hints on people, and it all stems from when we have to read hints from what our child is saying to us without it actually verbally telling us. So we can see energetic cues a heck of a lot better than men. It's not their fault, but there's a lot of women that call me very frustrated. I just want him to do this. Doesn't he know I want him to do this? And I say, absolutely. Have you told him you want him to do this? And and these are married people, and most of the time the answer is no. So yes, because we're so good at it, ladies, we cannot expect the men around us to have that skill, that social skill, mastered as well as we do, and it all stems from biology.
And I'm gonna. It's kind of an interesting. I'm laughing here because I'm a total hopeless romantic, and I think a lot of us women get caught up in that type of romance, if you are, that you see in movies, and then they just assume and they come like on that white horse or whatever it may be, like Pretty Woman in the limo or something like that. And I always used to get into arguments with my exes because I would assume that they should have known how to treat me. They should have known what I wanted, right? And it obviously kind of shatters that kind of ideal romance that you have in your head from the movies or whatever it may be. But it's so true. It's one thing that I had to come to terms with, is that you kind of have to just put it all on the table if you're not getting what you need. You have to tell them that this is if your needs are not being met, say, you know, this is what I like, you know, and then see if they're willing to provide that for you, or at least meet you halfway and you can have that conversation.
I agree with you, Tina. Authentic relating and communication, I call it Communication Nation now in 2015, is absolutely pivotal for every couple, married or not.
Next.
Yeah, I think it goes to, Tina said it very, very early in the program, about being present. There's a lot about being present and being present for each other when you're talking, paying attention, and just focusing on each other, being present.
I agree. I hate to admit it, but it's true. Next question. Truth or false? The man should always pay for the date.
Ah,
I love this one, and I'm gonna get a lot of boos right now, but I don't follow the status quo ever. And I believe yes, and I have a very good reason, I believe, for it. From what I've seen with clients firsthand, and particularly in the last 2 years, I'm flabbergasted by these results myself. But I do feel that even in 2015, as evolved as we are technologically and as human beings and our thinking with the things that we're creating, our social mores often still lag behind. And in 2015, if a woman pulls out her wallet at a dinner where there's family members to pay for her man, there may be that woman that's doing this, you know, the little whisper to another woman going, oh my God, did you see that? She paid the bill. You know, it's like we can't escape the social mores that have not caught up. So what I've seen it also really affect sexual intimacy between couples. Every man I talk to, they want to feel like a man. And in 2015, the guy that's super gorgeous, that can get any woman, he has the luxury if a woman pulls out the wallet and kind of take it. But most other guys still have a little bit of catching up to do with the high status men, and they're going to be a little bit humiliated and intimidated if there's other people around. So what I suggest to couples is, when there's other people around, kind of cater to the social mores, because somebody may say something, your aunt, your sister, your cousin, and it's just not an energy that needs to go into any relationship at all, having to deal with people talking. And it's just a reality that we all have to live in. So what I suggest is, in front of people, do the standard, what the social more caters to. Let the man pay. Individually, when you guys are alone, you guys can talk about, through authentic relating, what really is best for your relationship. And if the woman feels it's important for her to pay sometimes, then by all means, definitely do so. I do suggest, when other people are around, like family or friends, to cater to the social mores, just to avoid any embarrassment from the woman at all or from the man at all.
So I'd like to say something about that. So the first question was, should the man always pay? I'm old-fashioned in the sense that I'll just come out and say that I do appreciate if a man pays for the first, maybe the second date, but I also come from the point of view that I, as a working woman, for me, I want to be able to take care of somebody as well. So I think it's okay after that. Now, it's interesting because I had a bit of, when you were talking about the social mores and sticking to them, you know, we're trying to evolve in this world and come to a place where we don't focus so much and live our lives according to what other people think. Or I believe that that's what we should be doing. I think that's where we come to problems and insecurities and issues. I think it's important for, you know, everyone's going to have an opinion. Everyone's going to have something to say. If you keep living your life according to what, you know, Aunt Mary or Uncle Joe is going to say, then you are going to be so much more focused on living your life according to them than the way that you want to be living it. So I do think that, you know, if you're, let's say, first family dinner that you guys have, and you, as a woman, you pull out your credit card and pay, and that makes the man feel uncomfortable, have that conversation, address the concerns, and decide, you know, come across an agreement that works for you. But I wouldn't say do it because of what other people are saying, because I don't think that we should be living our lives according to other people's comments. You know, just in anything, everyone's going to have their opinions. I think it's more important to be secure in your relationship and respect each other there than I guess, define your relationship according to other people.
I agree with you 100%. I say just avoid any possibility of bringing the vibration of the relationship down at any given point. And that's just because that's what my work is. I teach individuals and couples how to keep the vibration of the relationship at the highest possible level at any given time. The only reason why I'm skewed on this, and I have found that it's just best to avoid any possibility, any conversation about what other people think of you and all that. It's going to bring the vibration down at all. And I just think it's better to just avoid it. But I agree with you 100%. No couple should live any part of their life dictated by what anyone thinks. I agree with you 100%.
Amen.
Let me just add a personal story in support of your position, Gabi. One time when I was married about 10 years ago, we were in D.C., and I was making, twice as much money as my wife. But on that particular day, my credit cards weren't good, and I didn't have cash in my pocket. So we went to pay for the dinner, and I just asked my wife if she would take care of it. Whoa! The expressions on people's faces, and even she did it reluctantly. And then we had a discussion, let's say a high-volume discussion later that evening. And my position was, what difference does it make who pays? But her position was that it made her family feel that I was exploiting her, even though obviously we couldn't be living in the house we were living in, or the cars we were driving, on our income alone. So my response is this: I really don't care what other people think, but in terms of if I'm doing the right thing. But neither do I want to fight battles I don't need to fight. And it did cause embarrassment for my wife, and suspicion and anger on the part of her family. So, if that had been an issue, I would have avoided it, because, why get involved in just, there's too much real stuff to be involved in the superficial stuff.
Okay, I agree. There is a difference in the generation. 21-year-olds are different than how you or I have grown up, Cooge. But even my 21-year-old hot finance clients here in New York City, even they tell me they prefer the guys. They feel better if they're the ones pulling out the wallet. So even the younger generation still is adhering to these social mores. I believe what Tina is saying is definitely what the evolved generation should be aiming for. Unfortunately, I've learned that I can't go around on the earth today expecting everyone in the room with me to be as evolved thinking as I am. So I just try to avoid some possible issues that might happen with couples. But let's go ahead and move on to the next one.
Gabi, I'm going to turn the show over to you to bring us to an end, because I think we've covered all the points.
Well, let's just go into some final thoughts then from anybody on the panel here on Vector Lovers.
Let me just say that when you first introduced this concept, I didn't understand exactly what you meant. But I do agree with your overall, with Carroll's overall concept that if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. You don't want your love relationship to be an accident. And you don't want it to grow. You may want it to grow organically, but you do have to pour gasoline on the fire. You do have to work on where it's going, because it's either getting better or it's getting worse. And a lot of that has to do with the energy and passion that you're putting into it. So, in answer to the overall question, yes, you want to be a vector lover, just like you want to be in your career. You want to have benchmark to determine whether you're going forward or backwards.
Great. Tina, any last words on Vector Lovers?
Yeah, so I love this term, by the way. I didn't mention that. It's the first time I've heard it. It's very I love the term. But as I've been talking about, I guess I'll leave with these final words, is that I really do believe, and I believe this because of how much I suffered in my own like emotional health because of the positions that I put myself in relationships. That it really is important. Really is important to first fill up yourself with love and happiness. And I always hated it when people said that to me, that you have to first be happy, and I would roll my eyes. And until I went through certain things and I realized that was actually true, I didn't believe it. But it really is important. And it's important to work on being 100% happy and fulfilled with yourself, and take responsibility for yourself. We hate that word, but it's life-changing. Embrace the word. It brings power to you. It brings power to you. So take responsibility for you, because then and only then can you really have a truly healthy, happy, and thriving relationship. And what I believe is that when you can do this, you'll naturally attract somebody that is in alignment with you and vibrates energetically at that same level, and you'll be more likely to be on that same straight path. They say that the people you attract into your life mirror your energy. So if you're constantly attracting certain types of people and finding yourself in those certain types of relationships, I think it's more important to look at yourself than the other person. But if you can work on yourself and work on fulfilling yourself in that way, I believe that while it's important to have conversations with 100%, communication is key. You'll have to have less of, like those conversations, and there'll be less expectations, hopefully less heartbreak, and you'll be able to be fully present and 100 times more fulfilled in any of your relationships.
Beautiful. And Bruce, how about you? Back to Lovves.
I think it's about being a positive person. I've always it's just the way I'm wired, and I've always been a very positive person, and I think that positive energy attracts people and attracts good people. So I think but I think we could also work on that. I think we can work on eliminating the things that are negative and eliminating negative thoughts, and just by being positive and trying to emit positive thoughts and positive feelings, I think that goes a long way in all areas of our life, not just relationships.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, vector lovers is a term I came up with noticing that most of my work, I've seen that the couples that are most successful, clients and friends and family that I've seen all around me, have a bit of an idea of what they want out of the relationship and the tools and the strategies that can get them there, and the vision and the commitment to stick to it. And all of those different parts of the equation are absolutely necessary. And I decided to call that Vector Lovers. So thank you so much, guys, for joining me today. And I'd like to thank my director and co-host, Cooj, and my featured guests, Tina Paymaster and Bruce Anna Paul. And thank you all to all the live viewers tonight and all the viewers that will come in and post-viewing. And join us next time, please, for the next Dr. Love Show. And until then, in love always.
Thanks, Gabby.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Gabby, and pleasure with spending time with all of you.
Yeah.